Hey, this is Sal, and this is my show. What's up, everybody? Sorry it took so long to get this video out, but I wanted to do some definite fact-checking and research before I spoke on this topic. It's one that most defensive firearm owners probably dread, and that's being forced to actually shoot an attacker. So in this video, I'm not going to focus so much on the actual shooting, but what happens afterwards. I've seen tons of videos and articles on defensive situations and, presenting how they go down, but not many that really focus on the aftermath. And so that's what this is about. You shot the bad guy, the cops are on their way, what now? Okay, first and foremost, it's disclaimer time. I'm not an attorney, nor do I want to be one. I'm not a peace officer. I hold no sort of educational privilege, and I'm not responsible for any actions that result from this or any other video. It's for entertainment purposes only, and it's purely my opinion. And really, I would take anything that you see on YouTube with a grain of salt. So, without further ado, here is my opinion on how to best handle this stressful situation. And this is based on my discussions with law enforcement personnel, members of the judicial system, and people who have actually been there. So, here we go. What happens after you shoot in self-defense? Well, firstly, it better have been necessary. Because if you just cap somebody right off the bat, you're in for a bad time. Always, always, always use your firearm as a last resort. I can't state this enough. And it's not just to protect yourself from a murder conviction, but to prevent the unnecessary taking of a life. You really should only go for your gun when the use of deadly force is unavoidable. Because the truth of it is this: regardless of whether or not it was self-defense, it's still considered unlawful to shoot and or kill someone, and for all intents and purposes, you have just committed a crime. Remember that the self-defense argument doesn't make shooting someone legal. It only acts as a justification for doing so. And you could still be charged with first or second degree murder or some form of manslaughter. But for this, let's just say that you're in the right. Somebody, pulled a pig sticker on you, and they're about to kill you, and so you draw up your 45 or, whatever it is you carry, and you blow them to kingdom come. I mean, situations vary, but really the first thing I would do is I would get on the phone, like either call or text someone that I trust, and tell them, hey, don't ask questions, but I shot somebody and I need a lawyer. And then I would call the cops. And when you're on the phone with the police, always tell the dispatcher, I shot my attacker because I had no other choice and I was in fear for my life. That is so, so important. Please remember that. And if they try to get you to tell them a detailed report of like what happened, what went down, just tell them you're going to wait for the officers to arrive. And a lot of the cops that I've talked to have told me whenever something like this does happen in an emergency, do your best to stay on the line, and also it's not a bad idea to give your description, like what you're wearing, what you look like, so that the responding officers know who you are. Take your weapon, unload it, place it a safe distance away from you, and for the love of all that is holy, don't touch anything. Leave your brass where it is, leave the enemy's weapon where it is, and as long as it's not a threat. Let the dead guy just lie in the dirt. He's not going anywhere. I mean, if he's still alive, I guess you could attempt life-saving measures if you wanted. But the point here is, don't make it look like you tampered with any evidence or tried to make it look like it played out a certain way. Just leave stuff alone. When the cops finally show up, get on your knees, put your hands in the air, and make no attempt to resist whatsoever. The best, most important thing that you can do right now is just cooperate, at least physically. Because they just got a call that there's been a shooting, and they're going to show up acting like you just shot someone, because you did. They don't know what to expect. Now, here's where it gets really scary because you're probably going to be arrested. And, they're going to be throwing questions at you left and right. Once again, that statement of, I had no other choice and was in fear for my life. The reason that's important is because that way they have it on record of you saying that it was in self-defense. And when they start asking you what happened and that they want a statement, just tell them, I'm too shaken up to give a statement right now, and I need to talk to a lawyer before doing so. And that's it. And really, if you did everything right, this is true. You're in no state to give a play-by-play and answer the millions of questions that they're throwing at you right now. You may be in shock. It's a very traumatic experience. The fight or flight instinct is still going to be very strong, and adrenaline's going to be pumping through you. Just try to stay as calm as possible and don't volunteer any information. As per your rights granted by the Fifth Amendment, you don't have to say anything to anyone at that point that could be used against you later. And I'm not saying this because I think you're going to be purposefully deceptive or untruthful. It's just that things have just gone rapid fire, and you're going to need time to decompress and seek legal counsel. You're not going to be able to remember every single little thing that happened right at that moment. See, the investigators are going to be treating this as a crime, and they're going to be looking for every little instance or every little discrepancy where your story isn't 100% truthful and airtight. That's why it's so important not to give up any information that could be misconstrued or twisted against you. And I would advise you don't speak to anyone before you speak to a lawyer, be it the cops or the media especially, or even your family. So we've quickly covered the law part. So what about the order? For that, we really need to understand what constitutes self-defense and how that applies to the use of deadly force. Now, the definitions of self-defense vary from state to state, but they mostly say the same thing. Then again, on the other hand, it's every responsible citizen's duty to know their own local and state laws. Ignorance is no excuse. Also, I think it's important at this time to note that self-defense and the use of deadly force in self-defense are treated as two separate things. Meaning that while self-defense may be justified, the use of force or the level of force used in it may not be. And I'm familiar with Texas laws, being from Texas, so I think I'm just going to use those as my base example here, replacing a couple words to make it a little bit more coherent. According to Texas law, self-defense is justified when and to the degree that you reasonably believe that force is immediately necessary to protect yourself against an attacker's use or attempted use of unlawful force. Now, it goes on to describe other instances when self-defense is acceptable, but I really want to pay attention to and highlight the to the degree section and the reasonably section, because that's where the justification of deadly force in self-defense really comes into play. So, according to this, you're only justified in using deadly force to defend yourself when deadly force is already being used against you, or someone's attempting to use it against you. And also, whenever it is found that you reasonably perceived this threat as life-threatening to yourself or a third party, which is somewhat subjective. So, do you see how things are already somewhat stacked against you? And this is why the "I was in fear for my life and had no other choice" statement is so imperative. Because it covers you for the time being until you can get like legit legal advice. And this is why your firearm is a last-ditch tool. And it's only to be used when you have no other option and people around you or yourself are about to be killed or seriously injured. So really, unless it was a super obvious instant where you're the good guy, like preventing a mass shooting or something, things are going to be tough. Just remember that the judge is not your friend and the jury is not going to be on your side. Although you are technically innocent until proven guilty, according to our justice system, they're going to be looking for everything they can to put you away. And you're the defendant in a criminal investigation, and the little nuances in previous statements and things like that are going to be one of the main turning factors in you walking free and 20 to life. Just remember that it's the prosecutor's job to dig and try to find any information that he or she can use to charge you, up to and including your initial statement. And that's why I said earlier why it's so important to just wait until you can speak to an attorney who knows the correct way to present your case in court. So really up until then, just keep your mouth shut unless you're affirming that shooting your attacker was your only option. You're going to have to prove that your situation was dire enough that it warranted taking another life, and that's not always something that's easy to do. And this, at this point, is where the DA or whoever is going to bring up that word reasonable. They're going to compare your actions to those of a hypothetical, reasonable person. And they're going to phrase questions like, in your situation, would a reasonable person have done what you did in self-defense? And they're going to ask that same question to the jury. And if enough of them say no, you're going to be convicted. The key here is to work with your defense to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt that either you or the person you were protecting was in imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm. And witnesses, of course, at this point can either help or hurt your case, but the main focus should always be on the fact that lethal conflict was completely unavoidable, and that when you fired your weapon, it was the only solution that had an outcome where you wouldn't end up dead or seriously injured. I know this is a very scary, uncertain topic, but it's one that needs to be addressed. And I'm not saying, certainly not saying, that if you or your loved ones are in danger that you should hesitate, but just be aware of the consequences when you pull that trigger. And I don't know, I just haven't seen a lot of videos on this particular topic. If anything, just take away that when you shoot, just shoot and be confident that you made the right decision, and afterwards do everything that you can to make things as black and white as possible. But that's all I have to say for right now. Be safe, be ready, and remember that protecting yourself doesn't end with pulling that trigger. Education is our best defense, so make sure that you're knowledgeable and that you're up to speed on the subject. I really do encourage you to share this with others. But anyway, thanks for watching. Leave your comments below if you feel like it. Bye-bye.